You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Hey.
Hello, hi, this is Mike Balzer and my co-host
Chris Kopack.
And we're here today to talk to two lovely people from, I don't know where you're at, but essentially right now they're on the internet and they have a little thing called Pet Prints 3D, and they've got a lot of lovely animals, and I'm not going to show any of them right now because I want it to be a surprise. But you know, Chris, I know that you have a lovely little furry kid behind you, and I have two little furry kids back here behind me, and they're taking a little nap. So we're both kind of bonded to our little doggies. I also have 4 cats. So when I saw this, I said, how cool is that? You know, and also, as Chris, as you're aware of, I do a lot of scan development, and I've been trying to scan my animals, but they don't like to stay seated very often. I tell him, sit still. He's learning, but you know,
they don't speak that language. They don't really understand that language.
I tried using sign language, and it doesn't work either. So I'm really intrigued.
That's gorillas. That's
on
gorillas, not dogs.
Oh, I'm really intrigued on what Ashley and Mary have to bring to us today. So I'm going to let my first question, which is kind of tell us about yourselves. So go ahead.
So, hi everyone, I'm Mary and this is Ashley, and we're calling you again from Toronto, actually, if you know, Toronto, Ontario.
Awesome, more Canadians.
Yay. Do you want to tell them a bit about you?
I act as brand manager for Pet Print 3D. Basically, I was hired on. I was told that we can 3D sculpt a dog, and I was told to make something meaningful of it. And Pet Print 3D came out of that.
I would title myself as a mutt, let's say. I'm a little bit in marketing, and I also do a lot of the finishing process that we do in-house. So I'm in the back-end production. So as soon as designers are done designing, I take it from there and then all the way to the end to the client.
Okay, so let me get this straight, and I don't have your email up. I noticed that I went ahead and went out to that website, and I said, wow, they use a lot of 3D system type applications, plus you have a few scanners. So are you a retail center as well as a service center up in Canada? Is that what I understood?
So we are sister companies. Our parent company is Objects Unlimited, who are resellers and distributors for 3D systems. So we do have those printers on hand. So the main printer we use for the pets is 3D Systems Projet 660.
650?
660.
Oh, 6. Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have the showroom with all the printers as well as the showroom with all of the models. So we're not an official storefront, but we have a doors open policy, so people can come in anytime and see the printers or see the models.
Wow. Okay, well, let's get right into it. I'm going to bring up your website now. Let me get my screen. There we go. So this is kind of cool. And from what I understand, you're able to create using the Projet 660 very colorful prints. Now I'm going to, where did I put my camera at? I also play around with this. Where's it at? Here we go. I'll click to it. And here's my little collection here. Here's my buddy Chris. So I do this through scanning, and I send them off to Shapeways, and I've learned a few techniques, and hopefully we can share kind of some trade secrets between us here. But I also have my own little friend here, if you remember the Super Bowl here in this country. I had actually talked to the marketing director of Shapeways. I was part of the South by Southwest panel conference, and he was part of it. So he gave me this as a little gift. But yeah, it's pretty neat. But I use a scanning process, and like I said, I tried to scan my dogs, and they don't sit still. Huh? I'm sorry?
Look at this little terrier. Yeah,
this one
these
here?
look great. Yeah, that one right there.
Yeah, they're just really good. So let's kind of go into the question. So like I said, I'm very intrigued with this, so I don't know how we can go. Let me look at my questions. You scan, as people can see behind me here, you scan cats. I shouldn't say scan, because maybe scanning is not the process here. You have models of dogs, you have models of cats, you have models of reptiles, you have models of birds. And I know that many of these objects, maybe the reptile will stay still long enough, aren't scanned. And then
Heat rock.
in reading in the description, people just send you a photograph. So I have a feeling you've got like a closet full of 3D artists back there rushing to get these little things out so that people can have their loved ones. So can you kind of go through the process a little bit, how you do this?
Sure. I guess our process, we do start with photographs. We have tried scanning pets, but there's two major problems with that. The first is that the flashing light of the scanner generally scares the animal, and then you end up with a model of your pet that looks terrified, and nobody wants that as a keepsake. The other problem this is the fur texture doesn't scan properly, and everything prints really dull if you're printing from a scan. So we generally ask for an assortment of photos from our clients from all angles. Our photo guidelines are sort of close-up of the face, profile shot standing, side profile of the skull, so we can basically get all the geometry from that. And then sort of a pose photo. If you have a desired pose, if you don't show off the top of your head, we can custom pose, and you don't even need a photo of it. Once we have the geometry of the pet, we can manipulate it. So it's sort of photos would come to me with a short questionnaire about what makes your pet special, and then I would create a folder from that, send it off to the design team who does their little magic thing, and then it goes through an approval process, back to the designers, to the 3D printers, and then it goes to Mary through the vigorous finish process, and then we ship it to you, or if you're in Toronto, you can come on in and pick it up.
Okay. So, God, you kind of explained everything in a couple of quick minutes. You sent me a little video, and I'm going to go ahead and play it now. Let's see what we got. So I'm assuming this is one of your designers that has created something here. What is the programs that you guys work with? And obviously this guy, is he working at this speed, or was this accelerated? Hello?
That's accepted. They're using ZBrush, and basically ZBrush has a function. Hi. Hello, can you hear?
Yeah, you're coming in and out, but so you can see my screen behind me, right? Okay. So this person created a frog.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's just one of the reptiles that we've been working on with our designers.
Pac-Man frog.
His name, the brand, or what the type of frog. He's a Pac-Man frog, and basically from photos, they're able to design it on ZBrush or Maya and Rhino. Those are just some of the programs that they're working on to get our end result.
And that's just a sped up video to show people when you talk about 3D printing, people are like, so out of paper? And we're like, no, it's like clay, but on the computer. And basically sort of an Instagram style video that shows people exactly how your photos turn into what you're holding in your hand.
Well, I agree with you, Ashley. That's what happens to me. My wife has tried to describe what I do, and she goes, "Oh, you mean you put it on a copier and you get this 3D thing? What does that mean?" A lot of people do not understand that.
Oh.
And so I spend a lot of time. I do some modeling, but it's always nice to work from a basic model. So do your 3D designers work from scratch, or do they have basic, let's say, a dog model from there, they sculpt it into the particular breed, or do they go from scratch?
So it's from scratch. It's that digital ball that you saw at the beginning. From that, we make sure that they start from scratch because every dog is unique. Like, even if they're both labs per se, or two clients that are labs, they're never going to be the same. I mean, we have to capture that uniqueness, right? So.
Okay, so
that's the ball. There we go.
Yeah, I'll just kind of step through it, but so essentially you go from a ball, you extend it out, and then you finish it off, and obviously you have some very creative people with talent, but you show on your website, was it like 2 to 3 weeks once you submit your photos that you'll have a ready product? Is a lot of that in the design of this, or is it just because you're backlogged, or
I would say a lot of it is design time. It's based on orders. Obviously, we complete them in the order that we receive them. If we have special rush orders for various occasions, unfortunately, dog funerals come up a lot, and they need a model in 3 days. And if that's the case, we will push something else to make that work for them. And then it also depends, now that we've added in an approval step for the client to actually see a digital file, we need to allocate time, because a lot of the time they don't get back to us for a few days with their changes.
Okay. So is this, you pay up front and then you provide the model for approval, and then from there you do the actual 3D print? So is it all up front at one time?
People pay up front. We go make sure all the questions are answered, and that I basically understand what the client wants. We make sure that that's translated to the design team, and then they just see a digital 5-up JPEG of the pet from different angles, so they can see every angle of their pet that we had to sculpt. And then they tell us either that they love it, or they hate it, or that they love it except that this tail needs to be a little bit bigger, or we get all sorts of strange feedback, or can we put a bone in the dog's mouth? Anything.
So one of my questions.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mike.
One of my questions, and I'll put it up here front and go back to the camera, is that I took a scan of my head and turned it into a little pencil thing. So have you had requests like that? I wouldn't imagine where they'd want
like, instead of doing a caricature, are you guys making like objects, like a little pencil holder or some sort of accessory? Have you guys explored that at all?
If we have a picture of it, essentially we can do it, but basically how Pet Print 3D kind of are marketed it very much is an emotional piece of art, and the majority of our clients have just lost their pets, so they're not looking for something cool like that. The parent company
Hello?
We're coming in and out.
Well, yeah, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go to their website. So I'll click on that. So they also do horses, but the fact is, since they have actual 3D artists that are working with them, they pretty much can work with anything. I can understand why they want photographs from multiple angles, so that way they can capture the full essence of their animal. The fact is that they are working from, as they showed, or I showed, as a ball. They can literally create anything depending on the sculptor, so that's kind of cool. So I wanted them, hopefully they'll come back here in a moment, but I wanted to talk to them about their printing process. One of the things, Chris, that you and I know about is that the Projet 660 is a gypsum-based kind of a glue inkjet. And the problem with the gypsum is that it absorbs the color ink, which is why some of the models are muted, or I would call it. And also you work with not RGB, which is what you use on your monitor, but you use CMYK. Looks like they fell out again. And when you're using CMYK, as you're aware of, that's a print format, and the colors may not be as vibrant. So you need to be aware of that. So I really wanted to be able to talk to them about that, and how do they actually go about that? So maybe they can provide me an email if they're still listening. It looks like they dropped out completely.
So I know exactly what you're saying. The colors on the gypsum or the sandstone-based printers are kind of more muted. You're wondering, I guess, if there's a way that you can enhance it or something?
Well, exactly. If you go back to their website and their gallery, some of these are very lifelike.
Yeah, and it also varies. I know, Mike, it definitely varies on the printer. The Z Corp machines are definitely more muted, have I think less there's less gamut of color, and I think the new Projet 660, they're always improving the technologies, obviously, and 3D Systems is definitely kind of on the forefront of the color game. So,
well, yeah, as you know, though, the Z-Core was bought by 3D Systems, and Shapeways actually works with 660s as well. So that may have been some of the reasons why they improved. But even so, the models, and I'll go back to it, that I've created, I have had to learn how to saturate colors a little bit more, figure out my color palette. Like you said, you have to limit it in order to get some vibrancy, otherwise you do get muted. But the other thing that I figured out, if you noticed on your little sculpture here, and one off to the right here,
is you can spray it or paint it.
Spray it, or as I use, that epoxy lacquer, and that gives it a more firm. And I just wanted to know if they apply those particular techniques as well. So again, in the show notes, I'll ask them that question. So the other question I have, and they have their website, and we can kind of go through it on their website. So let me drop back to it.
Talks about the pricing. Yeah. So
and
it looks like it ranges in between about $250 all the way up to about $1,500 for a horse. So really kind of cool that's one of the things I guess that would be maybe a little unique about their services. They're not using scans, they're not using photogrammetry to make these models. These are still done by hand on the computer, sculpted using ZBrush or Maya. So
as Chris just alluded to, it because they're actually doing let's just call it handmade, even though they're using a computer, it is still handmade. Essentially, they've got sculptors, even though they're working in the digital domain,
digital sculptors,
creating these. So you're getting a one of a kind. It's not just a snapshot or a photograph. Looks like they've come back in. Hi.
Hi, sorry about that.
That's okay. We kept talking. So we were on pricing, but before I get back to pricing, I want to talk a little bit about maybe just turn off your cameras there and we'll just have your screen come up. I wanted to know more about your print process. You know, as you saw with my models here, one of the things that's frustrated me is that the gypsum or sandstone kind of absorbs the color and it's been muted. And you kind of alluded to that when the sculptors are working, that they keep this in mind. Do you not only do you keep that in mind to create your color palette, but do you also spray them or use another material on top of that to kind of create more vibrancy? I've learned that really works on my end. Does that what you do as well?
So just a couple things. The first point I wanted to touch on was when it comes to scanning versus the sculpting, we realized from our end, from research and development and practice from internally, the scans pick up a lot of the shadowing, and sometimes we find that causes a little bit of more of a dullness. But internally, we've figured out a process that's different than most people. We've developed it. Well, we can call it a secret sauce or a secret process that best treats the parts and gives that better, best results and vividity, or color, the best color. We do print basically on 3D Systems Project 660, and from that we dip it in glue, and then we do our finishing process.
Okay, so you are dipping in the glue process that others has used, which is the super glue process. Yeah, I've found that I'm not a big fan of that, and I've actually gone to an epoxy lacquer that seems to work well. But whatever you're doing, your models look fabulous, and hats off to your sculptors and your process. Some of these look extremely lifelike, and as you mentioned, you try to capture, the essence of what the person who wants the sculpture wants, what appealed to him, like some of these poses. This one that's coming up here shortly after the tortoise is just great. Whoever just captured the essence of this particular dog, I can just imagine that dog being a little jittery. I noticed that you do horses as well, so I was thinking, man, that would be a pretty big scan. But since you're not having to do a scan, essentially you just use the images and create horses, and they're fairly lifelike. One of the other comments that I had, and you kind of mentioned why you don't use scanning, is how do you capture fur? Fur is really difficult because you don't have the necessary fine detail. So I'm assuming that part of the process is in the texturing to create the illusion of fur. You want to go into that a little bit, or is that part of your secret sauce?
No, it's a combination. It's trial and error. Every designer has a different sort of way they like to do fur. It sort of starts from the sculpting, where it could just be a matter of creating a little bit of a bumpier texture and then overlaying that with fur lines. Or if it's sort of a flatter dog, like a Labrador Retriever, you would have a flatter sculpt in the pet's geometry, and then it would just be thicker fur lines put right into the texture.
Okay. So Chris, do you have some questions before we get into pricing, and then we can let everybody go. And I really apologize for the technical issues that we had earlier and the delay. But thank you again, Ashley and Mary, for sticking with us and doing this. It really is a cool process. So, Chris?
Yeah, no, I think we covered all the bases. My main question really was like, how are you getting the horse? How are you able to get a horse into the computer? Because you must have some sophisticated photogrammetry system or scanning setup. But since it's all hand sculpted, you can really do it from it's really a digital sculpture. So you can do it from photograph. Some simple photographs, and they kind of outline it right on their website. So for those of our listeners that are curious, they can head out to petprints3d.com, and you can kind of walk through. They have a real nice website. You guys have a great website, I have to say.
Thank you.
The worst websites are websites that are businesses that like don't have pricing and they don't have an explanation of what they do. And so, like your website, just
sign up before you can do anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
and it's like your website's great because it just explains exactly what you do, and all of your pricing's right there. So it ranges. The pricing ranges about $250 to about $1,500, depending on if you want a dog or a cat, all the way up to a horse. That's right?
It's not so much the breed of the animal that determines the price. It's sort of just the size, because obviously the larger you get, the more hours go into sculpting, the more detail is needed, the more materials used, the longer the printer runs, the longer Mary has to slave away over to the finishing room, etc.
Right.
Well, and that's an important point, and I really like the way not only do you have numerical specifications, but you have visuals to show. You have the iPhone, which is at the 5S, next to a smaller print, and a roll of tape, and then, a coffee. And then, somebody put some thought into that. So whoever it was, kudos to them. It's very fun, imaginative, and I guess my last question to you is, what is your future? You said you're based in Canada. Are you looking at creating franchises or opening up a place here in the United States to do this, or is it fairly easy to work from around the world to have this particular process?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We didn't lose you.
Oh, no. We're here.
So my
We're
question.
here. Okay. What's next? I heard. Okay. We ship everywhere right now. I mean, we've shipped a number of orders to the States. We would like to expand, I guess, more into the European market. I don't think we're necessarily going to open up over there, but we do have a few, partners, if you will, that do other 3D businesses, and they carry our products for us, and they're able to better explain it to people who don't quite understand the whole 3D sculpting, 3D printing process. I think we're probably gonna stick it out here, stay small. We want to tackle some more horses and get into some exotic animals. We've always wanted to do a ferret, but we haven't had a ferret client yet. So that's sort of where we're at right now. We're talking to Tara at 3D Systems about 3D printing some pet prosthetics after the success of her campaign with Derby. So we're going to see if maybe we're going to try at least one and see if we can help a little dog run again who's never run before. That would be something cool that we could do.
No, that would be excellent. In fact, if you've probably seen it, what was it? I can't remember the name of the dog's name. I want to say Darby, but 3D
Derby,
Systems
yeah.
I'm sorry, Derby. They did a full little video on that, and actually I showed that at South by Southwest, and I guess there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. So yeah, it would be really cool. And then, if you do move forward with that, give us a holler. You can be one of our guest crashers to kind of talk about that. We'd really love to see what you do with that. I can imagine, because some people are creating very ornamental. We worked with Ian Abel, and it would be kind of neat to have dogs with similar issues, but have these really ornamental prosthetics. That would be pretty fun. So, okay, Chris, kind of sign us off, and again, thank you, Mary and Ashley.
Yeah, thanks, Mary and Ashley from petprints3d.com for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And we wish you the best of luck, and hope you keep us in the loop. If you guys update your services at all, definitely get in touch. We want to tell our listeners all about it, and we will see you Friday, our listeners Friday,
Friday,
review. We have a lot of stuff to cover too Friday, Mike.
Always.
I've got some cool stuff to go over with you, so we'll see you back here on Friday with
And
All
I've
Things
got some
3D.
tremendous announcements to show off as well.
Awesome.
Right.
We'll see you
Bye.
next time on All Things 3D.